but he doesn't have anything tied up in it like
Right.
Will does.
Mm-hmm. And so for him to have this moment, to have him have the power to call her Catherine.
Hello and welcome back to No Script, an unscripted conversation about theater's best scripts. I'm Jacob. I am here with Jackson, and we are today discussing a moving play, a fairly famous play by one of the really famous playwrights that we have not yet come to on this podcast, Terrence McNally. And as I was preparing the context section and all the materials for this episode, it occurred to me that to be in whatever season we're in right now and to not have come to Terrence McNally, probably just inexcusable
Right.
on our part. Probably
Kind of
just
shocking.
That was just a whiff. I think that, I apologize to the estate of Terrence McNally for it being this long. We'll try to rectify that by revisiting some McNally, not revisiting, but adding in more McNally plays in the seasons to come, because Terrence McNally is one of the legendary figures in American drama. He is, as you'll hear when I describe his career for the context section, a giant of the American stage. And his plays do something unique and powerful for the history of America, in that he was a gay man in New York City through the AIDS crisis, and many of his plays document and deal with that tragic moment in history, this play being no exception to that. Today we are discussing Terrence McNally's Mothers and Sons.
Yeah, a touching play that really like slow unfolds all the details that you kind of like discover things, and then as soon as it's all unfolded, just like more and more sucker punches comes. It's a great play. Excited for the conversation on it today. Excited to have the chance to turn to Terrence McNally and this particular work.
We do want to just say, for the folks that listen along chronologically, we had an opportunity to move up our plan for the special guest episode because Hope College's production of The Night Witches was opening, and we wanted to get that episode out to be part of their opening week sort of stuff that is going on. So our order for episodes has gotten a little askew. Last week we released the Two Trains Running episode. The week before was the special guest episode. We believe we are back on our correct cycle now. But if you were listening along and there's strange language every once in a while about this week or next week or last week or the third episode, we had a great opportunity, and that special guest episode is awesome. It's about a play that I have not read or encountered because I was not in that episode. But as soon as I heard the description about it, I immediately ordered my own copy of the script.
Right.
And I immediately contacted our season committee, where I am the chair of our season selection committee where I work. And I was like, maybe we should be considering this play.
Absolutely. It's a great play. It's got lots of great challenges in it. Great for cast, great for designers, great for directors. And yeah, the conversation was just really awesome. So it's 2 episodes back now. It's The Night Witches. Definitely recommend if you haven't had the chance to give it that a listen. It was a good chat, but excited to be back in the virtual studio today with Jacob as well.
Yeah, and certainly it's great to have those episodes where like the nature of theater becomes kind of the subject of the conversation, and doing a play about a plane crash, and about a series of plane fights, that's not really material that theater often grapples with, because it seems like it requires special effects. And then you hear these longtime theater faculty members describe just what the imagination and the ensemble can do, and it's inspiring to me. It returns me back to what is so great about the theater. This play today, Mothers and Sons, is also a what is great about the theater type of play, but very much in a different direction, kind of the 180 inverse of your conversation about the Night Witches. In the foreword to my copy of the script, I'm reading the script out of an anthology of Terrence McNally plays, and he has written a little bit about each of them. What he writes in the foreword of this script is about a friendship that he has with a famous screenwriter. And this screenwriter doesn't like theater, much prefers film. I would be on the other end of that from this person. And he talks about, the screenwriter talks about the reason why he doesn't like theater is that it's just people sitting around and talking. And Terrence McNally, I mean, to his credit, it basically says, you know what? It is kind of hard to escape that criticism of the theater. A lot of the theater is just people sitting around and talking. And I mean, I got to tell you, this play is just people sitting around and talking.
For sure. Yeah.
I think there is a reason why he included that story in the foreword to this play. This is a play of the unity of time and place. It is a play that takes place exactly in the amount of time that it takes to tell the play. It never changes location. It never changes scenes. The characters open in an apartment. They have about I would call it probably a 70 to 80 minute intense conversation about their histories, their life forward. They talk about some of the major events of the AIDS crisis, which in the timeline of the play was about 20 years ago. I mean, and then at the end of the play, something has changed for them. And that idea of two characters, or it's four, but it's really two in this play, enter a room and something 80 minutes later, something has changed for them is a massive thing for drama. That, I mean, in some ways, that is the core material of drama.
Yeah.
Two people enter a room, 80 minutes later or whatever, something has changed for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a profound play that sets up that sense of like you get to enter into a space and get a snapshot of someone else's life and that other person's life and how it interacts with someone else's story. These two characters, we're stealing a little bit from my synopsis, but like these two characters knew each other like previously, and so like there's this previous standing relationship. You know there's history between them, but as a result of this conversation, both their history has a new lens through which to be viewed, and their future is kind of up for a different question mark than certainly it was 80 minutes ago.
Yeah, and the other thing that Mothers and Sons does, and just because I suspect our conversation on the other side will be more character and technical and mechanical, the other thing that Mothers and Sons does is it's hard actually for me to imagine a much better example of what theater is doing with the idea of empathy.
Yeah.
That empathy, I mean, really, this play between the two major characters, Catherine and Cal, is about the empathy between them. The empathy of each of their individual losses. They share a loss that Jackson will describe in the synopsis, and they have massively different worldviews. And the question is about the empathy that they might hold between them, or that's a question. And then, of course, this play is also about the audience's empathy for, to be honest with you, a pretty unlikable protagonist as far as protagonists go.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of set up to be an unlikable protagonist and kind of watch along.
I mean, Catherine is very, very clever, and her cleverness maybe helps draw us in a little bit. But some of the things she says, I mean, are shocking. Talking about her own son's funeral, she said it was a little too gay for my taste.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whew, now that's a very clever quip, but it is also a harsh thing to say. And then when Cal describes some of the other harsh things that she has done with her son due to his sexuality, in the past, the question of the play for the audience, I think at least, is what kind of empathy can we build for the pain and suffering that this person, who is, I think, meant to be presented to us as somewhat fundamentally unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what?
Yeah.
Given that we know the pain is real, what do we do with that?
Right. And yeah. there's more to say there. I want to jump it. Hopefully we find our way back to some of that, because there's some great gold in there to get after. But before we jump into the conversation even more than we already have, want to say thank you to all of our patrons over at patreon.com/noscriptpodcast for being patrons of the show. Y'all are awesome. Y'all make things like special guest episodes and all of our seasons possible. So thank you all for being patrons of the show. If you're looking for a way to be a part of the No Script community and just help out the show, patreon.com/noscriptpodcast is a great way to do that. You'll find a number of different tiers of patronship over there, but the lowest one is just $1. $12 over the course of a year. You get access to patron-only posts, and most importantly, you get to help out the show and make sure that we keep getting to do these sorts of conversations. So thank you to all the patrons who have already decided to do so. If you are curious about what that looks like, you can head on over to patreon.com/noscriptpodcast, and we will see you over there.
And now, back to the script.
There we go.
So again, first time Terrence McNally is the featured playwright for our conversation today, and that's just a miss. I mean, Terrence McNally is so vitally important to the history of American theater, as you will certainly see, is just a legendary figure. McNally, of course, playwright, a screenwriter, although in a kind of a limited capacity of screenwriting, and then also a profound librettist. There's a great quote, I forget which musical he had finished working on, and he put a sticky note on it, or I'm not remembering the story exactly correctly, but essentially he sent a note sort of out into the world that said, no more musicals. Yeah. And he, unfortunately, he kind of had to carry that one with him for the rest of his career.
Yep.
He was born in Florida, but, set that aside only for what I'm about to describe. See if this sounds familiar to you, Jackson. His family then moved to Port Chester, New York. From Port Chester, New York to Dallas, Texas.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. And then on to other places in Texas, Corpus Christi, which ends up being the title of one of his most controversial works that I'll talk about in just a second. He ended up attending Columbia in 1956. He saw as a child a famous production of Annie, Get Your Gun, which has become part of his story of falling in love with the theater. That also features into the backstory of Mothers and Sons a little bit. In the mid-1900s, there's a story that I didn't independently verify, but that does appear occasionally. Apparently, he served as a tutor to John Steinbeck's kids, which is like, whoa, his proximity to other legendary figures is sort of seems like a repeating theme of his career. And then at some point along that path, he just becomes one of the legendary figures, and then other people's proximity to him. That is a story of becoming one of the big G great artists, if I've ever seen one. In the mid-1900s, he served as a stage manager for the Actors Studio, where he ends up getting some of his one-acts produced and sort of starts along the way. He has, in 1964, at the Royal Theater, a play go up on Broadway called And Things That Go Bump in the Night. For at the time, it was a very controversial play because it featured two gay men who were in a romance together. And that was obviously, theater at the time is much more conservative than it is now. It was not well received. It ended up being like a massive flop. He got terrible reviews for it. Seems like he has a good sense of humor about it, although that might just be because his career managed to stay on track despite that early massive failure. He goes on to write, an incredible library of plays. You'll recognize many of them. Some of them you won't. You should read all of them. In and amidst that, he has this sort of fling romance with, not fling, I shouldn't really call it that because it was like 5 years, with Edward Albee, and they're kind of differing. And some of this comes from the McNally's website, his foundation's website. Some of their differing views on how to present their sexuality to the world kind of ended up being one of the things that seems like it kind of broke the romance up. McNally has been, he describes in an interview at Theater Talk, he's been an out progressive gay man for really as long as his career has been around, which is, again, somewhat makes the career much more impressive for what he was able to do given the discrimination of the industry. His plays are going to be things like Botticelli, Where Has Tommy Flowers Gone, Sweet Eros, some of those early works. Then he gets into the real meat of his before he was like insanely famous, but while he was clearly one of the best working playwrights. Some of these you'll probably recognize: Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune, Lips Together, Teeth Apart, a musical called The Rink, a musical called The Kiss of the Spider Woman, a musical called Ragtime. Anybody?
Yeah.
The Lisbon Travista, man of no, the Lisbon Traviata, a man of no importance, Some Men, A Perfect Ganesh, and away we go. In 1995, I'm highlighting this because it becomes important to the story of Mothers and Sons. Terrence McNally writes a play called Masterclass. It's a play that he wrote for actor Zoe Caldwell, a part for her. So hold on to that. We'll come back to it. He then goes on to write, probably, I mean, this is a somewhat sad thing to me because his library of plays is so good, but probably his four most popular projects, which are The Full Monty, The Visit, Catch Me If You Can, and
Mhm.
Anastasia, right? So these are
Yep.
big produced commercial musicals that he is the librettist for. He goes on to win across the course of his career an Emmy for a play called Andre's Mother, which is another one I'll return to here in just a second. He won, I mean, I don't think I've said this in our, what are we in, season whatever number now, hundreds and hundreds
Yeah,
of
I am.
episodes. I don't think I've ever said this. He won 2 Guggenheim Fellowships.
Wow.
I
Mhm.
mean, to win one makes you a genius, right? But 2, I mean, whoa.
Wow.
He also won multiple Lucille Lortel Awards. He won 5 Tony Awards, including in 2019 a Lifetime Achievement Award. In 1996, he was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame. I mean, that's 96, so that's like, I mean, 30 years before, 20, however many years before he passed, before he had won many of his other awards, he was already one of those figures. 2011, he was inducted into the Dramatists Guild Lifetime Achievement Award or Hall of Fame. In 2018, he received an induction into the American Academy of Arts and Letters, which is kind of widely considered really the highest award or Hall of Fame style situation for like working artists in America. In June 2019, and this at this point I'm just reading from his website, to mark the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, Queerty, I think that is a publication, named him one of the Pride 50 trailblazing individuals who actively ensure society remains moving towards equality, acceptance, and dignity for all queer people. In 2020, amidst all the other things that COVID took from the theater and the world, COVID took Terrence McNally. He died of COVID in the early part of that year. He had had lung cancer in the 90s and had since that time COPD, and so that's what COVID did and does, and what plays we now don't have because Terrence McNally passed and he was not able to write into his very old age, as many of our other great playwrights were. We'll never know. His foundation now is massively involved in giving money towards new work, towards emerging playwrights. So they give out the Terrence McNally New Works Incubator, the Terrence McNally Recovery Commissions, which is a pair of commissions that they give for an emerging and an established playwright, both of whom are in recovery. Terrence McNally was an alcoholic, and in the later part of the 20th century, I think it was actually Angela Lansbury basically saved him from this by talking to him about him at a party, and so he's been sober and an alcoholic for that time. Terrence McNally also gives out, his foundation gives out the residency at the Hermitage and the Philadelphia Theater Company's Terrence McNally Award. His website says his legacy lives on in his plays, musicals, and operas that continue to be performed all over the world, as well as in his papers, which are kept and open to the public at the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas at Austin. So there you go. That's a overview look at Terrence McNally's incredibly impactful life and career. Just a giant of the American theater, and somebody that we're sad that he was very old at the time of his passing, but still he talks about what plays when he did an interview for Mothers and Sons, he talked about, is this going to be my last play? And it did not end up being, thank goodness. But you do wonder which, I don't, I should have written down maybe what his last play actually was. But did he know at the time that was going to be his last play? I don't know. That's a strange thing to not have had the very late life of a giant like that. Okay, so Mothers and Sons specifically, I brought up the play Andre's Mother, which was it started as a very, very short play back when short plays were popular, and then he eventually adapted it into a fuller TV movie. That is about some of the characters of this play. It's essentially Mothers and Sons essentially is a sequel to Andre's Mother, which is the title character. Andre's mother is never named in the play. She's just the mother of a man named Andre who died of AIDS. And then there's a bunch of people that swirl around, Cal and his family. So Cal and Andre's mother, who's now given a name in this play, Catherine, will become the two centerpiece characters of this play. And now this play is 20 years after Andre's Mother, the play and TV drama. Andre's Mother is what he won his Emmy Award for, that television movie adaptation. So I mentioned earlier, too, that he wrote that play called Masterclass, which he wrote for Zoe Caldwell. In 2010, he sees a production of Masterclass, which now stars Tyne Daly in the role that he wrote for Zoe Caldwell. And he has, at that point, the idea of writing a play now for Tyne Daly, as he had written for Zoe Caldwell. And this is the play that comes out of that. And so Tyne Daly is in the initial productions of this play. It has its world premiere at Bucks County Playhouse in 2013. Then it goes on to be on Broadway at the John Golden Theater in 2014. And then, just a huge circuit. The Ensemble Theater in Sydney in 2015, the Philadelphia Theater Company, the Speakeasy Stage Company in Boston in 2015, the Aw Dogs in Albuquerque in 2016, at the Vermont Stage, Artist Rep in Portland, Northlight in Chicago in 2019, Shakespeare and Company in Massachusetts, City Lights Theater in San Jose, Pinnacle Theater in Salem, Oregon. In 2021, Metro Stage in DC streamed a production of the play because of COVID that was very much in tribute to Terrence McNally, who had just passed at that time. 23, the Morgan Wixon Theater in California, with an all-black cast, performed Mothers and Sons. In 2025, just last year, a theater in my own community here in the Omaha metro area, Voices in Alliance, performed the play with one of my colleagues playing Catherine. And then March of 2026, so if you are listening along to this podcast in its timely order, you have the opportunity to see this play if you live near Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at the Orpheum Theater Center. Again, March 2026 at the Orpheum Theater Center. Mothers and Sons nominated for 2 Drama League Awards in 2014 for Outstanding Production of a Broadway or Off-Broadway Play, for Distinguished Performance, and also for the Drama Desk Award. The play also received 2 Tony nominations, Best Play and Best Performance by a Leading Actress in a Role, of course, for Tyne Daly. There's a little bit about Terrence McNally and Mothers and Sons, which all feels like important setting the stage for what this play is, because it's part of like a larger story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely, this play is doing a lot of work over about 20 years of story that is certainly all tied into Terrence McNally's experience of New York in the 1990s and the AIDS crisis. So there's lots to get into here. Excited to jump into the conversation. I'm going to try to keep the summary as short as possible, but we all know how that goes for me. So jumping into the conversation, or to the summary here, this play is set in the quote-unquote present, but that present is in fact 2014. There are things that tie it to that particular date.
Don't even get me started about that.
Yep. There's not so much things that like date this play, at least from the current moment that we're talking. Like there isn't, copious use of cell phones or anything like that would be like, oh, that's weird. But rather it's the boundness of time from 2014 to 20 years ago when Andre, who is a character who I'll introduce, died. So there is
which is like the mid-90s AIDS crisis.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 2014, it's in an apartment in New York. in Manhattan, so kind of like right across from Central Park West. There's a beautiful view of the park. So so the kind of set in New York, and we meet these two characters first. We meet Catherine and Cal. Now Catherine and Cal know each other from 20 years ago because Cal was Andre's lover and Andre is Catherine's son. So it's this connection. This is the first time that they've met, I believe, in those 20 years. And so they're kind of meeting for the first time in a very long time and kind of talking about the fact, we find out later, that Catherine has returned with a journal that Cal has sent to her. He's found one of Andre's journals, or kept it all this time, decided not to read it, and decided finally to send it to Catherine. And she's decided to return it to him in person, for a variety of reasons, which we might get into eventually. However, over the course of this conversation, a lot is sort of brought up. They talk about the day of the funeral. They talk about what has passed since then. We find out that Catherine has lost her husband not too long ago, and she is essentially naming that she is alone in the world at this point, and kind of you get the sense that she's sort of wondering what to do. There's a lot of action in this play around, like, Catherine's still staying. A lot of times the conversation seems like it has come to an end, or like this would be the moment where Catherine might leave, and she in fact doesn't. She kind of lingers and stays. And so there's this kind of ongoing wondering around, like, what are we trying to find here? What connection are we trying to find here? Throughout the action of the play, we find out more and more about Cal and Andre's relationship and the kind of tragic way that it ended, with Andre dying as a result of AIDS, and Cal taking care of him through that. We also discover that Cal has found a new love. He's married to Will, found Will 8 years after Andre, and they have a son together whose name is Bud. And Will and Bud at the start of the play are out in the park going for a walk, but partway through they kind of crash in. Bud is all energy and kind of goes to Catherine. There's this little bit of magnetism between them as he sort of invites her to be his grandmother. He says he has a lot of godparents and aunties and uncles, but no grandmother at the moment. And so he kind of floats in and out of the scenes as they negotiate like bath time and snack time and bedtime and all the things, which leads to Will also having a conversation with Catherine about Cal, and about notably there's some amount of age difference between Cal and Will, to the point that Will did not experience the 1990s in New York and the AIDS crisis, certainly not in the same way that Cal did. And so he is reflecting on to Catherine the kind of sense of loss that Cal is going through. Catherine is expressing her own sense of loss at the loss of Andre, and some of this, like, Cal just went and replaced Andre with you, Will, and she's naming some of that pain, that she didn't get to replace Andre with anyone. There's lots to get into here, and I'd kind of like to leave some of the finesse of these scenes as one long ongoing scene to our conversation. But sort of what builds throughout this conversation is this wondering around whether Catherine is going to take anything with her. Cal brings out a poster of Andre performing Hamlet. Cal brings out photos and pictures. We find out that this journal is in the room. And so there's this question about what's going to happen with all these pieces. We find out that neither Cal or Catherine have read the journal. And so at one point, Will picks up the journal and starts reading it, and we start to hear Andre's voice in the room by way of these journal entries. And all of this sort of storytelling and story sharing and pain naming flies around, and everyone is kind of wondering, like, where do we go from here? And into the last scene comes Bud, who once again kind of reaches out to Catherine and says, "Don't worry, you don't have to be my Grammy." He calls her Catherine, and she says, "Wait, what did you call me?" And he says, "I'm sorry, I mean you're Andre's mom." But that is a pretty stark moment, and he kind of does this little bit of storytelling at the end that tries to welcome her into. He has this imaginative story of her as his grandmother, and that she came to visit, and she ate Oreos and milk, and she moves towards him as well, accepting the Oreos and milk. And there's this kind of like glowing moment at the end of the play. The stage directions at least have this moment at the end where this story is told by Bud. There's this moment of connection between Catherine and Bud, and a moment of connection for Cal and Will as they listen to the story that Bud is telling about having Catherine as a grandmother. Then the lights kind of flash up very brightly at the end of the play, and I'm interested to kind of wander around what sorts of interpretations that could be. But this kind of like last image, very bright, of these four people. And really, like the presence of Andre as well has been invoked throughout this play. He's not on stage, of course, but these four people and their relationship to Andre and their relationship to each other, wondering where they're going to move forward now.
Yeah, well, but let's just start right there, right, with this idea of the presence of Andre, because that is, he to be somewhat cute about it, he sort of haunts the play,
Yeah.
right? He is this figure from that is their shared life. Will even, he feels that Andre has been sort of around in Cal's life and past, even since their relationship has begun. There is, nobody's cast to play Andre in like a ghost type figure who would wander throughout the stage. I suppose, a particularly brave director who wanted to ruin the play could do
Right,
that.
right.
But there is a visual presence of Andre. Now, one of the things that they do in the play is that they look through all these old photos. So there is that, right? They have actual visual representations of them. But unless you were going to do something fairly high concept, like project the photos that they're seeing onto the set or something, the audience is not going to see that. What the audience is going to see, and I think this is a truly fascinating little convention by McNally, is that very early in the play, Cal goes off stage and gets a poster of Andre when he performed as Hamlet. And it's described as a very large poster, which to me, I think is really McNally indicating the audience is supposed to be able to tell what it is. They're supposed to be able to see it. It's got to be big enough that people can see. And so when Cal brings it on, it's this picture of Andre as Hamlet. Apparently he's kind of screwed up in an angry revenge sort of posture. And when he turns it around to show Catherine has this very visceral reaction to the poster. In fact, asks him to turn it back around. She indicates that she was sort of surprised. They were the line is something like, we were just talking, and then all of a sudden there he was. And then later in the scene, which, I mean, the whole play is one scene, so later in the play, Catherine sort of says to Cal, I think I'm ready now to look at this poster, and they turn it back around. And then as far as I can tell, the poster just hangs out for the rest of the scene. And so that later, when Catherine is in her sort of big, really her most energetic part of the play, she talks about demanding revenge herself, making that comparison between herself and Hamlet. The poster is there. Now, there's all kinds of questions that a prop of that magnitude is going to open up. One of them, just to locate at that moment when she says, I want revenge, I want my own revenge, is like, are you directing the person of Catherine to echo the posture of the poster, either intentionally or subconsciously? Are you trying to draw an effective link between those two things? How do the characters interact with the poster for the rest of the play? What does Will do when he comes home and sees that this poster has been taken off the wall in their hallway and now is set up in their living room? Bud certainly reacts to the poster and says that out loud. But what does Catherine do? She has several moments in the play where she's alone on stage. Does the poster figure into that encounter? Does she ever turn it back around? Does she ever touch it? How often does she look at it? I mean, a prop like that sits on stage, that is a picture of a dead son and a dead partner. I mean, that is weighty, weighty props work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it certainly would be central. I don't see in the stage directions that it is removed. So it's certainly the opportunity for it to remain. And it's certainly like the way that pictures play a role in this play is certainly profound, which is maybe a way that I could try to wander around that last moment of the bright light at the end is sort of like the flash of a picture, because of the way that like the picture of Andre as Hamlet is there, the pictures that she's kind of talking about the early days of Andre in New York, that she's looking through the box of photos that Cal shares with her. You kind of wonder like what, so to have that flash at the end.
Yeah, let me just read the stage
Yeah.
directions for the folks that are listening. So, Bud and Catherine, right? You described. He's brought her these Oreos. She has agreed to the Oreos. She's wanted to be called Catherine now. I think that is a long scale reference all the way back to when the character was only ever called Andre's mother. Didn't even
Yeah.
have a name.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes by Mrs. I'm misremembering her last name right now, but
Gerard, I
Mrs.
think.
Miss Gerard, thank you for a lot of the play. And now she's going by Catherine. So obviously there's a change happening there. Change, very important. So Bud and Catherine have this moment. He's bringing her the Oreos. He's telling her a story about having two fathers. They lived high up where they could see Spider-Man. So that's the Macy's Day Parade. They were very blessed, but they had no grandmother. Will and Cal are looking on at this interaction. Catherine is taking the Oreos. And Bud says, one day they found one. She had a milk mustache and her name was Catherine. Now here's the stage directions. The four of them have stopped moving. The lights have stopped fading. Instead, they are swiftly raised to a blinding white intensity. We look at them like this, motionless until the lights snap off. So there's really two lighting things that are happening there. The first of them is the blinding white flash that you've been describing. But that is preceded by a fade out of the lights, a slow fade, which is called for earlier. Now, what does a slowed fade say to the audience? It says the play is ending. Oh,
Right.
look at that lights fade. Such a nice, oh. So that white flash then is disrupting what we expect will happen. When the lights start fading, we expect they're going to fade down to black, and then we're going to stand up and applaud. Where everybody in the audience is like, okay, it's been about 80 minutes, about time for the play to be done, and the lights are fading out. It seems like the characters have ended their journey. Here comes the fade. Everybody get ready to clap. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lights flash up.
Yeah.
And that makes you go, what? What's happening? Why are the lights flashing?
Yeah.
What is going on? And then they snap out to black. So this is not only something about how the lights interact with the characters, but there's something about how the lights are interacting with the audience experience that's going on too.
Absolutely. There's certainly something like ephemeral, esoteric happening with the lights in this play. There's another call for very particular lighting in just the given the first notes of the play, which is that it's in the apartment. It's a blustery, very cold winter's day, the shortest day of the year. It will be dark soon. The change from pale winter light coming through the apartment windows when the play begins to the evolving warmth of the interior as and when the living room lamps are turned on during the play should be marked. So I think where that slow fade that you're talking about is in fact like a play long slow fade that we've kind of been in from the very beginning of this slow moment, from the slow movement from maybe harsh winter light to the kind of glowing warmth of these characters, communicating at least with each other, fireplace, lamps, etc. As evening is on its way. We know that eventually a Christmas tree is going to be decorated here tonight, so there's more lights that are being associated. So yeah, I think there's definitely something going on with the light in this play that is doing some heavy lifting, heavy storytelling, fun to get to design on it.
Yeah, and as a final image, it's obviously very powerful in a play about a mother who's lost a son and a man who's lost a husband. That the final image is, and I'm trying to be more careful about my language around this than maybe I need to be, but the final image is of Catherine with a little boy, right? And she's having a familial type encounter with this little boy. This is a woman who's lost her little boy, right? And then it's of Cal and Will, arms around each other, watching this. Cal is somebody who's lost. I mean, he did not get to marry Andre. And in fact, the fact that they could not marry is part of the story that Cal tells about their lives. But, a person that he had anticipated marrying in Andre. and now he has a different husband, and that's where I'm trying to be more careful about the language. But there is something to the loss, the hole in the lives of both Catherine and Cal. The ending image is not, it's not that the whole, it's not that either Will or Bud are replacing Andre. Obviously that is not what's happening, but it is also the case that they are having these beautiful touching tableau moments of encountering someone else in that spot in their lives. All
Hmm.
while, and I steadfastly maintain this, the poster of Andre
Right. Yeah.
is sitting, up against the mantle or up against a couch or something like that.
Yeah.
Angry and demanding revenge as Hamlet.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Catherine at one point or another like talks both Catherine and Cal talk about this like wandering around revenge or the difficulty in moving on and from the death of Andre, and especially Catherine notes that like I want revenge for his death. And so
They talk a lot about again, one of the things that the play is doing is tracking how AIDS changed the gay community in New York City and how that has changed in the 20 years since. And one of the things that they talk very explicitly about, which I find just a fascinating kind of capturing of the culture, is the idea that like Catherine asks Cal if he ever found out who gave Andre AIDS, because Cal knows it wasn't him. And Cal says that he wondered, he has some suspicions, but that he never found out. And Catherine says, if I ever found out, I would kill them. And Cal talks about the complicated reality for that community at that time, where that he says something to the effect of like, that's just not what we did. I mean, you could imagine hunting out, every partner that you'd had and finding out and exacting your revenge. But Cal's essential his documentation, his documentary presentation of that time is like, that's just not what we did. I fantasized about it, but that's not how we handled this as a community.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and while there's still certainly lingering pain around that, he's like I think you're right to notice that like Andre is not, or I'm sorry, not Andre. Bud is not a replacement for Andre, but Bud is certainly like some sort of a continuation of the story. I think for both Cal and Catherine. Catherine at one point like has to clarify a couple times that there's no way that Bud is Andre's son, right? Uh, and so there's some clarification around that, but the way that Bud,
Which I do think is weirdly important.
yes,
I'm not sure that I can quite put my finger on it.
yeah,
But it really matters to Catherine that she learns that Bud is not Cal's biological son. Now, Cal and Will insist that that does not matter to them, and that all good there. But I don't think it does on their side. But it does seem to matter to Catherine that, and for how exactly that quite matters. Cal is not biologically related to Andre at all either, and Bud certainly isn't, obviously. But it does matter to Catherine, that discovery.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I mean, this play has so many of those like sort of wondering, touching moments, right? That like let actors work their way into figuring out what the touching thing is. And certainly a lot of them have,
Especially because of Catherine's not a very touching character.
no,
We
right.
talked about this at the very beginning of our conversation. Like, I don't have a lot of like built up need for her to reconcile. I mean, she's been truly pretty awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a kind of consistent set of scenes, or at least she's certainly been awful to Andre and Cal. And
Yeah.
certainly a number of build up. We hear Cal describe Andre visiting his father in the hospital, and Catherine just saying some really awful things to him about who he
And
is.
that's where the story. This play is so, maybe naturalistic is not quite the right word, although
It's close.
it's unity of time and place.
Yeah.
You could do a fairly naturalistic. I mean, you could even invite people into a beautiful apartment overlooking Central Park West and do a version of the play that is that captured because it's one scene, it's one extended scene over whatever 70 to 90 minutes. But it because of that, it's not a tradition. It's not very plot driven, and in fact, exactly how the story beats land is not obviously really the point of this play. But what story there is, you have to figure out what is the ending. What happens at the end of the play that Catherine and Cal need to happen at the beginning that takes the whole play to get to. And it does seem that one of those things is Catherine admitting to someone this part of her relationship with Andre, which perhaps you might imagine, I might imagine if I were directing an actor playing Catherine, that she has not admitted to anyone.
Yeah.
The part of I don't think we've talked about, other than maybe your synopsis, is that the why now of this play, why after 20 years, is that Catherine's husband has just died, just several months prior. And what does that mean is that now, and this is a very moving part of the beginning of the play to me, her and Cal are the only people that remember Andre. They talk when they bring the photos out. Cal says something to the effect of, and this is heartbreaking, we're the only two people that these photos mean anything to. Now that is a familiar and very painful discussion about death. As people who remember people die, the memories die. And or at least your ability to share and access those memories die. But also, it's some about the AIDS crisis, right? Like all their friends died, and so Cal and Catherine. So Catherine, one of the reasons, if you were trying to figure out why is Catherine here, you might say is, she needs to talk about Andre with someone. And now that her husband is gone, Cal is the only person who has any memory of Andre.
Absolutely.
Or at least Andre is an adult. Perhaps they have some like friends in their community who might remember him as a child, although their community, it seems like, fairly well rejected him when he came out. So maybe that's why she's here. Maybe that's what's caused this conversation. But what wraps it up? And there are these two admissions at the end. In fact, as Catherine goes back and forth with Cal in their most charged argument, sort of towards the end of the play, Catherine even says at one point, I'm almost done. I just have to get through. And what she admits are these two things. She admits that she had an affair when Andre was still alive. And that, I don't know that that's really the admission. It doesn't seem like she really cared about her husband all that much. But what is the admission is that she called Andre one day after he had gone to New York, and she feels like he had abandoned her, and his sexuality had come between them, and his life choices had come between them. And she tells him in fairly graphic and crude language about the affair. And she admits that. Now, if she had never admitted the affair to her husband, then Andre would be the only person she ever did, which means now that he's gone, nobody. So this is a secret, I think. My reading of it is. And then she tells another secret. Then this is what you were describing. When her husband, Andre's father, had some sort of surgery, Andre came to the hospital, and she found him crying in the waiting room and said, some outright cruel things about why he was crying, about his sexuality. She's lashing out in hurt and anger, but that doesn't excuse anything. But these are the two admissions. And then the play ends, by my reading of how my pages are laid out, 2 pages later.
Right.
So obviously that seems, when characters finally admit something 2 pages before the end of the play, you're like, oh, okay. Something about the admission of these secrets is what the play, at least like the plot of the play, has been headed towards.
Yeah, and you sort of, at least for me, a lot of the initial part of this chunk of the play is Cal being very hospitable to Catherine, and you kind of wonder why. Because Catherine is on stage as this kind of like abrasive presence.
She's not like trying to be nice to her.
Right. Yeah. And we know that there's pain in their story from before. And so over and over, you see Cal continuing to not kick her out. Even and like check-ins with Will too, about Will being like, why
Will is like, hey, you should kick her out.
Yeah. And to the point, like, it's so clear that Cal is caring for Catherine in some way that even Will is kind to her. even though Will wants her out of there. Will like offers another drink to her.
Well, and there's one moment where Will, kind of in the middle of them going back and forth about something, turns to her and says, "What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Why are you here? What's going on?" But then there's no even response written. The line just continues. He says something like, "I guess I better go take care of Butta in the bath," or something. So he doesn't even, at least the way the lines are laid out on the page, there's no line break for her to even respond. He says that question and then immediately turns and walks out of the room.
Right. Yeah, so there's all this energy kind of going. I love that line because, like, especially at that point of the play, that's the question we're asking as well.
It's really the question of the play.
Like, why are you
here?
trying to work through?
You don't seem to like this guy. He doesn't like you, obviously. You both feel that the other person is part of the pain and suffering that Andre endured, not necessarily because of AIDS, although I do think Catherine thinks that, but the emotional turmoil.
Yeah, and so like it's kind of slowly getting pulled out of her after having been alone for such a long time, and like I think you're right on too with this idea that like these are the only two people who can talk about Andre from a form of remembering. But then it's interesting that it's sort of broken by Bud, who also can talk about Andre. Andre's been hanging on the wall of the hallway the whole time, and suddenly
Bud is the person that doesn't. Not only does he not know Andre, which Will also doesn't know Andre, but he doesn't have anything tied up in it like
right.
Will does.
Mm-hmm. And so for him to have this moment, to have him have the power to call her Catherine, but to note that like when she reacts to that she's probably reacting to him not calling her Andre's mom, but then to end his story with and one day they found one, she had a milk mustache and her name was Catherine. I think certainly speaks into this like Catherine came here to maybe confess, maybe certainly to talk about Andre, but perhaps also to confess these two moments that she regrets to someone who knew.
Somewhere, I can't remember if this is in the foreword or in an interview or something, Terrence McNally talks about this play is about when Catherine decides to take off her coat. She's standing there at the very beginning of the play with Cal overlooking. They're starting to talk. She's got her coat on. It takes a lot of the play for him to talk her into taking her coat off and like essentially staying a while, right? So I just say that to say, right after these two admissions, especially the one where she admits the terrible things she said to him in the hospital, the next line is Cal. She admits it. She says what she said to him. Cal said, "I know, Miss Gerard. He called me right after from a payphone there. He was pretty devastated." Then listen to these two lines. These are the next two lines. Catherine, can you imagine a mother saying that to her son, her only child? Cal, I'll get your coat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're looking for a marker that really, I think maybe that line. Can you imagine a mother saying that to her son, her only child? I'll get your. I mean, to me, it is that what this play is about to Catherine. There's nobody that she can tell that to. Admit that it's a confessional play.
Yeah,
perhaps she needs to confess.
Mm-hmm.
Andre's gone, her husband's gone. Cal's the only person to confess to. Right? And so when she finally gets the confession out, can you imagine a mother saying that to her son, her only child? I mean, listen, folks, the play's called Mothers and Sons.
There it is.
That's as close as we're going to get to saying the title of the play out loud.
Yep.
Can you imagine a mother saying that to her son, her only child? Cal, I'll get your coat. Whew.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could go page by page, basically, in addition to all the kind of meta things we're talking about and the wonderings around story and the way that this play talks about themes and light and all these beautiful things, the like individual wittiness, the way that these lines fly, the kind of naturalistic way that we are observing unities of time and space across the whole thing. This play is awesome. We could go page by page and just love everything about each of the pages. Alas, we are getting down to the end of our time for this particular conversation on the podcast, but hey, if you have read this play, if you plan to go see this play at one of the productions that Jacob mentioned, or saw one of the plays that Jacob mentioned and want to chat about this play,
it's coming up again.
Folks,
let me plug real quick. If you're in Sioux Falls, you can see this play in March of 2026. So if you're listening to this in February or March of 2026, at the Orpheum Theater Center in Sioux Falls, check it out.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. And then come chat with us. You can find us on the socials that we are on at the username at NoScriptPodcast. We also have a Gmail, noscriptpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on any of those sites. We'd love to keep talking about mothers and sons with you.
If you enjoyed our conversation about mothers and sons, if you've enjoyed any of the other conversations of our season so far, or many, many, many episodes and seasons otherwise, please recommend us to your family, your friends, anybody you know that likes conversations about theater, about character, about writing, themes, mechanical structure, things like that. This is a great place for them to get involved in those conversations, maybe learn a little about a play they didn't know about. Send them our way. They can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, all the places you get your podcasts. You can also like our Facebook page where a link to the new episode just shows up on the feed every Monday when we publish, including next Monday when we're back with another great conversation about another great script. Until then, I'm Jacob here with Jackson. Thanks for joining us for No Script, the podcast.